George, I think I am not alone in the shock that I experienced. I was surprised, first of all, and I'm sure you were as well, at the callous disregard for human life that the suggestion represents. That somehow or another, mystically, magically, we're going to remove over 1 million human beings. We're going to erase the place where they are from and their country, their heritage, and establish this thing. Like you, I thought it was incredible. The other part of this is it was hard for me to understand why he did not have his national security advisor at least contact many of the leaders in the Middle East throughout the Islamic world and ask them for their opinion. As it turns out, he didn't do that. So first, demonstrating a callous disregard for life, a complete lack of respect for the people that live in the region. But it was incomprehensible that you would say something like this publicly without first establishing whether or not it made any sense. It doesn't. No one will support it. Saudi Arabia has made that clear. Egypt, Jordan, name it. Everyone has come down and said outrageous. Now he looks foolish as well as not very smart.
Well, that's something that I've been noticing you've been drawing attention to, and I share this view. I mean, Trump's very smart in some respects, but he's nobody's idea of an intellectual. He has no kind of grasp of international politics. I joked earlier, he probably thinks Sinai is the plural of sinus. He's never been in these places. He has no knowledge, really, of the world. And he's therefore either not being advised at all or being poorly advised. I mean, who could have briefed him that blurting all this out yesterday, even if you wanted to achieve it, blurting it all out yesterday in that way was a very, very unwise idea.
No, absolutely. But I think this is a reflection of the people that surround him at the moment. Let's be frank. He is really, in many ways, the prisoner of his donors. When I say donor, I'm talking about people that donated hundreds of millions of dollars to his campaign and extracted promises from him. For instance, Miriam Adelson, $100 million, but you must promise me that the Israelis can annex the West Bank and effectively do to the West Bank what we've seen happen in Gaza. He made these promises. They sent their money in. And now his closest advisors, the people around him, consist of people that are very close to those donors. And they are reminding him of his obligations. I don't think he is the way many other presidents have been. We went through something similar like this with Reagan at one point. And Reagan finally was told by Weinberger, look, send the Californians home. You have to govern now. Forget all that nonsense. You're the president. I don't think anybody has suggested that to him. And I don't think he understands the gravity of the situation. He made some comments about Ukraine, George, regarding the losses there, which were completely outrageous and made no sense, and then turned around and said, well, if you want more aid, give us rare earths. Of course, nobody bothered to tell him that the rare earths that Ukraine possesses are all in eastern Ukraine, underneath the areas where the Russians live, that are now controlled by Russia. Surely somebody would have said something, but they didn't. Surely somebody would have said, well, the western Ukrainian lands have already been bought up effectively by Cargill, DuPont, and Monsanto, subsidiaries of our friends at BlackRock. He's walking into these things and turning what otherwise might be a useful statement into an ambush in which he looks ridiculous. So if I were in his position, I would fire a lot of people that are working for him right now around him. But then again, you and I don't know. Maybe somebody went in there and said, listen here, boss, I don't think you should do this. This is dangerous. And he threw them out of the office. We just don't know.
Did you feel that Netanyahu was delighted or dismayed by the idea? After all, let's imagine for a minute that this comes off, that Gaza is occupied by the United States armed forces, which is the only way that this could conceivably work, because the Israelis can't occupy it. They've been trying for the last 16 months. do you think that the idea that what Netanyahu and his gang consider to be a part of Israel, they are ready to allow the Trump family to turn into effectively a casino and a set of condominiums? Was he taken by surprise by this, in your view?
No, I don't think he was taken by surprise. In fact, if you look at the picture of the two of them in the Oval Office, he's on, our friend Netanyahu is on the left, and he's grinning like the proverbial Cheshire cat. You know, he's obviously delighted. And he's looking across at this old man who's practically saying verbatim whatever he wants him to say. If anything, I think Netanyahu is practicing American foreign policy through ventriloquy. He's simply moving Trump's mouth, and Trump is saying what he wants him to say. And that is, unfortunately, tragically, the perception in the United States, that Trump is not a free actor, that he is simply a puppet. And the puppet master is Netanyahu.
It is quite extraordinary, to the extent that there's video, I've seen it, you will have too, of Trump actually pulling his chair out, having him sat down and then pushing his chair in like you would do to your good wife. This is the President of the United States practically waiting at table on a visiting politician, moreover, one for whom there's an extant international arrest warrant.
Well, remember that President Netanyahu does not simply represent 6+ million Israeli Jews. He represents Jewish international power and capital. And so he is treated differently for that reason, if none else. It would be a mistake to say that why is President Trump allowing himself to be manipulated or exploited by this man who represents so few people? That's a mistake. This is a larger concentration of capital and power that he represents. And Trump knows that. And he's dependent upon it. He was dependent upon it to get elected. So now he's doing what they elected him to do. The question is, what will Americans do? Americans are usually, George, asleep at the switch. Most Americans don't pay any attention to anything that happens beyond their borders. They're too busy watching football and drinking beer and enjoying life. Are they going to wake up and suddenly recognize this has gone too far? Because I don't think most Americans voted for Donald Trump because they wanted him to move in these directions. They voted for him to deal with the border, to deal with immigration, to deal with inflation, to straighten out, streamline government. These are the things they wanted him to do. They're not interested in a war in Ukraine, and I don't think they're interested in a war in the Middle East.
Even less interested in an occupation of Gaza. No good could come of that. And I personally don't believe that this will get past first base. It has united the whole of the Arab world. It has united all but Britain on the European continent against him. It has alienated a substantial number of genuine American firsters, who I saw one today, a pretty hardline right-wing guy who said, am I alone? I don't actually want Gaza. And I think that will be quite a considerable constituency, that one. So I don't actually see it going anywhere. But what it now does, if you want to look on the bright side, if America owns Gaza, that means Netanyahu cannot go back to wholesale bombardment of Gaza. He's now going to be bombing Donald Trump's territory.
I don't think so. I think, in fact, as soon as the ceasefire is over, large numbers of those 2,000-pound bombs that President Trump could have kept from the Israelis that have been released to them will absolutely be used to finish up Gaza. And eventually, I think he'll turn his attention to the West Bank. But more important, I think he'll double down on war with Iran. The one thing that Netanyahu is worried about is Donald Trump's predisposition to find a way to cut a new deal with Iran. Because Donald Trump, as confused as he appears to be right now, and as foolish as some of these statements have been, I know him. He does not want a war with Iran under any circumstances. The problem is he's no longer in control. And that should have been obvious from the footage that came out of the Oval Office. Netanyahu has the initiative, and Netanyahu wants that war. If he doesn't get that war, he has no chance of accomplishing any of the goals that he set for himself and Israel. The Greater Israel Project will fail because he's also got Turks to his north now on a border with him. He's got to be very careful what he undertakes with the Turks. They are by no means friendly to him. So either he acts and he destroys Iran with our help, or he's probably lost and won't last in office.
Well, the Iranian president says he wants to meet with President Trump. Trump already said he wants to meet with him. Trump seems to be doubling down on the stance that Iran can have a nuclear program, but it cannot have nuclear weapons. Iran, somewhat to my surprise, still say they neither have nor want nuclear weapons. You've got the basis of a deal there, don't you, with Iran?
I think that the hostility to Iran is irrational and unnecessary. It's similar to the irrational hostility to Russia, George. Iran is a great power, a great nation. It's a civilization that is coming back very strongly in that part of the world. We should have good relations with them. They are eminently approachable. They are not all crazy. This is not a quote-unquote mullah-dominated theocracy anymore. In fact, people that go to Iran and spend time there make it clear to me that the mosques in Iran are practically empty most of the time. That whatever enthusiasm there was for this radical religious Khomeiniism is long since vanished and vaporized. So I think there really is. The sticking point, of course, for us is Israel. And this is something that Israeli government has insisted upon. And that's what Netanyahu wants. And obviously, thus far, President Trump has delivered. Like you, I'm a little concerned that we could be trapped into something that we otherwise would never do. That's my concern. And there are all sorts of ways where we could become involved long before we show up and do anything in Gaza, because you and I know what he's talked about. First of all, it's not going to happen. And then secondly, if we tried to do it, it would take years. This is not going to happen quickly by any means. So the great danger now is the ceasefire ends, the bombing starts, more people are killed, and something triggers the war with Iran. We're not out of the woods on that one.
Finally, Colonel, and I'm grateful as always for your time. I wanted Trump to win for one reason and one reason only. I felt that he, unlike Harris, would derail the express train headed for World War III in Ukraine. And yet, and you've touched on this, increasingly Trump advances proposals for an end to the war in Ukraine that equally don't make any sense, like the rare earth one that you just mentioned. He stopped the supply of weapons to Ukraine for a weekend, but it has, as I read you say, it has restarted again. There's no halt to the bombs and missiles going from US depots to Ukraine. Is he going to let us down even on that one?
There's clearly no coherent strategy. There was no coherent strategy on the part of Biden, unless you want to equate strategy with embroil ourselves in conflict as often and as much as possible. So there is no coherent strategic approach to anything. I think you have a struggle. The struggle is inside Donald Trump. On the one hand, he's surrounded by the wrong people, George, who are giving him bad information and pushing him down the same road that Biden went. On the other hand, you have the inner Donald Trump. His instincts are not bad. They're usually pretty good. And he knows we don't want a war with anybody. We don't need it. Nobody really wants a war with us. That's nonsense. We have big problems in the Western Hemisphere, big problems on our border, problems in our cities, problems with immigration. He knows that. And that's where we need to focus right now, not in the Middle East and not in Eastern Europe and Ukraine. And I think he understands that, but he's struggling because he's got so many people around him who are pushing him in the wrong direction. And then he says, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should do. Perhaps he doubts himself. I think international relations is tough for him. I think he has a much easier time domestically when he talks about economics, although I don't support this passionate approach to tariffs. I think that the time for that sort of thing is over, and it's not going to work. But at least he's thought some of that through. I don't think anything we've discussed thus far, George, has been thought through by him clearly.
Well, every 72 hours, he's declared war on somebody else, usually against his own allies. He's going to run out of places that America can take over. Colonel, thank you for joining us.